Careful, guys, we're being recorded now.
I heard that.
You're saying the computer has ears?
The computer has ears and eyes.
Okay. Big brother's upon us.
Let's see. Dane Devin Bacon Jr.
He's not here. Move the junior in. That's me. So just move the junior. That was my son. But that's our senior.
Senior. Right. Let's see. We've got myself. Gary. Willie. And John, what's your last name?
Harrington,
Harry.
HARRINGTON.
Here.
Like Pat Harrington from, what was it, Three's Company?
Oh, you don't have to show your age. It's fine.
Okay, like his gray hair doesn't shine.
And from the young crowd. Is it? Did I? Wait, actually.
There was also a manufacturer of ammunition called Harrington and Rich.
Oh, yeah.
They made revolvers at one time.
Okay. Where's my slide? There we go. Now we're okay.
It's a presenter.
It's a slide progressor. I am the
Slide
presenter.
Oh, okay. Slide progressor, okay. I forgot.
All right, everybody, we are back in the book of Revelation. I left my paper Bible at home, so I'll just open it up on my
You want to use my Bible?
phone. I got one here. All right. Last time we left off, we got to about here with the mountains falling down, and then the internet just cut us off, which I did not like. So we're going to pick up right here. We mentioned the sixth seal of the scroll being open or broken or loosed or whatever word your version wants to use. And lots of classic Day of the Lord imagery started happening. The sky vanishing like a scroll that's being rolled up, which is notably from the book of Isaiah, but also the Apostle Peter uses it in 2 Peter to talk about the Day of Judgment, right? Let's see. Also especially interesting, the people hiding themselves in caves and rocks and mountains and begging the mountains to fall on them to spare them from the day of the Lord's wrath. I had thought of it just recently, but this would be a really weird detail if it is talking about the final day of judgment. Because you don't, whenever you read about the final day of judgment in the Bible, you don't read about anybody being not there because they died beforehand. You read about everyone being there because they resurrected everyone who died beforehand. So this is not talking about the final day of judgment. It can't be. It is talking about some other moment in history that is future tense from John's point of view when he's writing Revelation, as we talked about a lot already. But they plead to the mountains to fall on them, to hide them from the face of God who is on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb. And they said, the great day of their wrath has come. And they asked the question, who can stand? And who can stand in the great day of the wrath of the Lamb? And you might think it is a rhetorical question. However, the next section of Revelation goes ahead and answers the question for us. You get Revelation chapter 7. So who would like to read these first 8 verses for us?
Could we go back a second?
Can we go
On that
back?
Last part, yeah, the last part, they're talking about falling, the mountains falling.
Sure.
Just seems kind of, strange thing though, to even ask for something like that, because they're pretty much asking for death,
Yeah. But they're not asking for
unless they somehow.
the
think
kind of
they-
death that would be coming for them if the mountains didn't fall on them in that moment. It's in the original context where the image comes from, which is in the book of Isaiah, it's talking about the Assyrians who were going to come and they were going to take the Israelites away, and the Israelites, when they were, progressively like getting cornered towards their capital city, when it was going to come down to the final moments of that conquest, the people were going to be longing for death because the Assyrians were an absolutely brutal people, or at least their military was. They would kill people in just grotesquely brutal ways, like
Similar to what Hamas did to Israel recently.
sure, but that's the only time we'll mention it. But yeah, they were brutal, and so people would much rather have rocks fall on them than be captured by Assyrians. That's the original context of it. That, all right.
Do you want somebody to read 12 through 17 out of 6 or start on 7, chapter 7?
Starting in chapter 7.
Okay, I'll read. How far you want me to go?
I want you to read every name of the tribes of Israel. I want you to go all the way to Benjamin.
Okay, you just tell me when to stop. The seal of Israel. After these things, I saw 4 angels standing at the 4 corners of the earth, holding the 4 winds of the earth, that the wind should not blow on the earth, on the sea, or on any tree. Then I saw another angel ascending from the east, having the seal of the living God, and he cried with a loud voice to the 4 angels to whom it was granted to him the earth and the sea, saying, do not harm the earth, the sea, or the trees, till we have sealed the servants of our God on their foreheads. And I heard the number of those who were sealed, 144,000 of all the tribes of the children of Israel were sealed. Of the tribe of Judah, 12,000 were sealed. Of the tribe of Reuben, 12,000 were sealed. Of the tribe of Gad, 12,000 were sealed. Of the tribe of Asher, 12,000 were sealed. Of the tribe of Naphtali, 12,000 were sealed. Of the tribe of Manasseh, 12,000 were sealed. Of the tribe of Simeon, 12,000 were sealed. Of the tribe of Levi, 12,000 were sealed. Of the tribe of Issachar, 12,000 were sealed. Of the tribe of Zebulun, 12,000 were sealed. Of the tribe of Joseph, 12,000 were sealed. Of the tribe of Benjamin, 12,000 were sealed.
All right, thank you. All 12 tribes.
Where's Ephraim?
Yeah, you caught it. That's an interesting detail here. You got all of the tribes of Israel listed except for Ephraim, which is weird, right? So this sort of list originally occurs in the ending of the book of Ezekiel. And Ezekiel is talking about the state of Israel after they come back from the Babylonian captivity, and there would be in Ezekiel, it's 1,000 from every tribe. And he mentions all of them. And Ephraim and Manasseh are 2 separate tribes. here you have. You have Manasseh, right?
Yeah,
But you don't have Ephraim, and instead you have who?
Levi.
You have Joseph. Joseph
Yeah.
was in it, yeah.
So the
So,
tribe of Joseph, 12,000, just, that's in verse 8.
yeah,
Yeah, no, I see it.
so out of all the 12 tribes of Israel, which two tribes were not actually Jacob's sons?
I would say
From
Joseph
Manasseh.
and Manasseh.
Ephraim and Manasseh. They were Joseph's sons. So it's interesting. Now, okay, so we have some from the tribe of Joseph, which is sometimes used as a combination name for Ephraim and Manasseh, because they were both Joseph's actual sons.
Right.
But Ephraim's missing, and we have Manasseh. So people have speculated on what this detail is supposed to mean, and they note that Ephraim in Israel's history was sort of the hotbed for the idolatry which constantly plagued Israel and pulled it away from God.
Run that by me again?
Ephraim was the hotbed for the idolatry that constantly pulled Israel away from God.
But Benjamin seemed to be the same.
What do you think?
Well,
Benjamin?
just thinking about, yes, and just thinking about Judges. And the city of Gilead, for instance, had was it, yeah,
Gibeon.
Gibeon. Had the priest whose concubine or servant.
Oh, you're thinking about the priest who was from Ephraim, who became the high priest of the cult in Dan. Is that who you're thinking
I'm
of?
thinking about the one that's listed in the last book of, last chapter.
Oh, the man who chopped his concubine up.
Last chapter, what?
Last chapter of Judges,
Judges.
who chopped his concubine up after she had been.
Yeah,
raped.
Janai in the back. We haven't talked about judges in our team class, but
Not
there's
yet,
some really crazy, kind of raunchy stuff that happens at the end.
but say, but then that started the Civil War and Benjamin was almost wiped out. So
Yeah.
I would have thought that Benjamin would have been the troublemaker rather than Ephraim of the 12 tribes.
You would think, maybe. There was also, there's at least two judges who were from Ephraim, who they may have started out good, but by the end, they were promoting some idolatrous stuff in all but name. Thinking of Gideon, by the end of his life, he was like the head of a cult, essentially.
Yeah.
And Ephraim, he's from Ephraim. And yeah, I'm drawing a blank on the other guy. Oh, Jephthah. Jephthah was from Ephraim. He was an
He made a
Ephraim,
bad pledge.
and he made a bad pledge. Did human sacrifice to the Lord, which is not at all ever what the Lord wants. So, Ephraim, man. And in the time of the kings, Ephraim only got worse. They only got worse. And they're the only ones that aren't mentioned in this list.
I got a question. I don't know where the verse is, but I know Jesus said so many times, and I'm paraphrasing, but the idea was so many times Jesus wanted to gather Israel together like a hen gathers her chicks under her wings.
Yeah,
Is this the reason why? They were that rebellious group of Ephraim?
oh, I mean, they were all
This
rebellious.
was,
They were all like that.
it was a different time period, is, well, this was what, another 80 years or so after Jesus.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right,
And Jesus was
Maybe 7, yeah.
for 500 years after Ephraim stopped existing.
okay, so Jesus was 500 years after Ephraim.
After Ephraim, after the Babylonian captivity, yeah.
Okay.
So who is this 12,000 from the tribe of Joseph then, if it's not Ephraim?
Don't know. Perhaps it's using the name Joseph to not use the name Ephraim.
Okay.
I don't know. That's an interesting thing, and I'm glad that we talked about it first, because that's probably the most interesting thing in the list. These 12,000 from each tribe are the 12,000 who are sealed as servants of God. They're sealed on their foreheads. We're going to see later that being sealed on your forehead is a sign of like your allegiance to a master. So we have later on in a later chapter, we have people being sealed with the sign of the beast as a sign of their allegiance to the beast. And here we have the same idea, but it's God's sign on his servants, people who are loyal to him. Now, it's like a moment of calm that is specifically so that God's people can be marked, so that God's, you know, the I can't say they're people, but like the beings that he's going to send out to do this judgment thing know who to not kill, who to not hurt. It's a moment of calm so that God's people have them marked so that they will be spared this judgment. This is the answer. Who can stand in the day of the great wrath of God? It's the people who have remained faithful servants to him. Now, if you remember back in the throne room scene, when Jesus was introduced, he was called the Lion of Judah, right? It was called the Root of Jesse and the Lion of Judah. That is what John heard. And then he said, and then I turned and I saw, and what did he see? Anybody remember? A lamb, a lamb that had its
Blood.
throat slit, the blood, but it was alive. It had been killed, but it was alive. So this is the same kind of thing that is happening. He said, I heard the number of the sealed. 144,000 sealed from every tribe of the sons of Israel. Now John is going to turn around again and see something different. What does he see? Who wants to read this section for us? 9 through 12.
Want to get it?
Devin.
After this, I looked, and behold, a great multitude that no one could number, from every nation and tribes and peoples and languages, standing before the throne and before the Lamb, having been clothed in white robes with palm branches in their hands, and crying out with a loud voice, salvation belongs to our God who sits on the throne, and to the Lamb. And all the angels were standing around the throne and around the elders and the four living creatures, and they fell on their faces before the throne and worshiped God, saying, Amen. Blessing and glory and wisdom and thanksgiving and honor and power and might be to our God forever and ever. Amen.
All right. So he heard the number, the 144,000 of Israel, and then he turns, and what does he see? A counted multitude? No, what kind of multitude?
A huge one.
A huge multitude that no one could number. And not just from Israel, but from
Every nation.
every nation. So we're getting the sort of people of Israel thing, and then countless multitude from every nation, sort of like how like the Bible goes, right? There's the Old Testament, that is the nation of Israel, their story, they are God's people, they have the law, and then the Lamb comes and dies on the cross, raises up again, ascends to the throne, and now God's people are not the people of Israel, they are a countless multitude. So. No one could number them. They're from all the different nations and the tribes and people. They have palm branches in their hands. This alludes to we call it the triumphal entry or the triumphant entry. Matthew 21, Jesus is riding into Jerusalem on a donkey, and the people are all throwing their coats down for him to walk over, and they have palm branches, and they're all shouting, Hosanna, Hosanna, or save us, son of David, which itself is an allusion to how the people received the Maccabean forces when they came to liberate Jerusalem from the Greeks. They threw down the palm branches and they cried out, save us, save us. And they even called him son of David because Judas Maccabeus was from the tribe of Judah, and he was a descendant of David. So they called him son of David as well, just exactly what they said to Jesus.
Jesus was from the tribe of Judah.
Yeah,
Yes.
oh yeah, he's the lion of the tribe of Judah. So it's an allusion back to that, and I don't think it's a coincidence that Jerusalem and the New Jerusalem gets referenced in Revelation when God's people, God's servants are doing the same thing for the Lamb when Jesus had, as the people did when Jesus had come to the actual city of Jerusalem. I wouldn't think that's a coincidence. I think that's a very intentional image that John is using. So, we also get, a little detail that the angels, the elders, the four living creatures that we saw before, they're all worshiping God over this, and they're saying that he's worthy of thanks and honor and wisdom, power and might, and et cetera, et cetera. So now we get a word on who are these people? Who is this countless multitude? Who would volunteer to read these 5 verses for us? Here.
Then one of the elders asked me, who are these people in white robes? Where did they come from? I said to him, sir, you know. Then he told me, these are the ones coming out of the great tribulation. They washed their robes and made them white with the blood of the Lamb. For this reason, they are before the throne of God, and they serve him day and night in this temple. The one seated on the throne will shelter them. They will no longer hunger. They will no longer thirst. The sun will no longer strike them, nor will any scorching heat. For the Lamb who is at the center of the throne will shepherd them. He will guide them to springs of the waters of life, and God will wipe away every tear from their eyes.
All right. It's a good image, right? Or the end result is a good image, right? What is the process that they go through to get there?
They wash their robes.
Oh, but I mean,
They came through the great tribulation.
the great tribulation. The great tribulation. The phrase great tribulation, I believe it was mentioned in the first chapter, or at least the second chapter, when he's talking to the churches. When Jesus is speaking to the churches, and he mentioned that the church in Philadelphia would be spared the great tribulation that the whole world was going to go through at that time. So the great tribulation has been mentioned. And these people are coming out of it. Like, they were not that they are being saved from it, but they were in it, and they are coming out of it. And there's only one way that you come out of the great tribulation aside from it ending, and that is you dying. So this countless multitude, they are the people who have died, but they have died because of their faithfulness to Jesus. faithfulness to God. And so because of that, they are elevated. They are before the throne of God and they get to serve him day and night in his temple. And he who sits on the throne will tabernacle over them. Some versions say will dwell with them. It says he will tabernacle over them or among them. There is only a few places in the Bible where God is talked about as fake word tabernacling with his people, and that is one in reference to the actual tabernacle, which was the large tent that Israel had at the center of its camp in the wilderness, and then for the
With, we call it, they're always talking about it. With the cherubs on it, what do you call it?
oh yeah, the Ark of the
Ark of the
Covenant.
Covenant,
Yes,
could be right,
exactly,
sorry.
exactly. That's it. And it remained the place where God's presence dwelled with his people up until the finishing of the temple by King Solomon. And then the only other place that it's mentioned is in reference to who? If you read John chapter 1, the word became flesh and he tabernacled with us. That's the actual word.
John
He-
1,
John 1, I think verse 14 or maybe 11. But the actual word behind the word dwelt is the word tabernacle or to live in a tent, to pitch a tent. So it's definite, John is definitely saying, hey, Jesus is God who dwelt with you. Who dwelt with you the same way he dwelt with Israel in the tabernacle.
the word becomes flesh, and the word became flesh and dwelt among us, and we beheld his glory, the glory as of the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth.
Okay, but there's also, at least in my version, for the word dwell,
Well, that's what I got.
there's another meaning there, tabernacle, like
Okay,
you said, Brent.
Yeah, it's the word skenoo, which skin is the word for tent, because a tent is made of animal skin, right? So it's skin, skin, but that's
It
the
means
word
tent.
for to be in a tent, to pitch a tent. So. let me Hop on back to Revelation 7. So he will tabernacle over them. Now this phrase to tabernacle over them is a little weird because they're serving him day and night in his temple. And he who sits on the throne in the temple will be tabernacling over them or among them. So it's kind of a ambiguous image. It evokes the same symbolic meaning that the temple and the tabernacle did, that God is among his people. But to mix these images sort of throws one for a loop, because the tabernacle was the thing before the temple. And the temple was the thing before the tabernacle, and the two didn't happen at once. So it's kind of weird. But if you view it in light of how Jesus and Paul talk about A, Jesus himself, and B, the church, it starts to make a bit more sense. Jesus is, again, in John, talked about as himself, the tabernacle. And then the apostles repeatedly talk about the church as the temple in which God and Jesus dwell with us. So it's the tabernacle dwelling in the temple, which is Jesus dwelling within the church, within us. Now, he's envisioned as a shepherd taking care of his sheep. So it's interesting, he's the lamb, but he's also the shepherd, or as Peter calls him, the great shepherd. The great shepherd. And he takes care of his people. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall want for nothing. He makes me to lie down in the green pastures and by the pleasant waters. And then he mentions he will not let the sun strike them anymore or any scorching heat. I didn't put it in these short version notes, but that is an exact quote from somewhere in the book of Isaiah. I didn't write it down, but it's an exact quote from either Isaiah or Ezekiel. That phrase right there. They shall hunger no more, neither thirst no more. The sun shall not strike them, nor any scorching heat. It's not even an allusion, it's an exact quote. So if you have the time tomorrow, you can go, and if you have the notes packet, you can go and find where it says that. And you can look at the context of that original passage. And this is big for the book of Revelation for understanding it, to go back to the passages it's referencing and understand those contexts. And you'll understand what Revelation is talking about. Even when it gets into like really weird sounding stuff, which I think is a super good thing. So from the Lamb in the midst of the throne or for the Lamb, will shepherd them and guide them to springs of living water, and God will wipe away every tear from their eyes. Again, it's a direct quote. Yes.
Alright, so you said that's a direct quote from either Isaiah or Ezekiel? I
I,
think
I
that's-
got Isaiah in my Bible.
There you go.
Okay, so I think that's an interesting point, because it's quoting one of the elders, so you're basically saying somebody from heaven is directly quoting the Old Testament, is that correct?
Yeah,
Or would you say that?
why not? I mean, it's all a dream,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah,
It's all a dream, but yeah,
I just think that's interesting, like, whoever it is,
and by dream, I mean like it's a vision. I don't mean like it's just a dream, yeah.
yeah, but whoever it is like taking
He's
directly
directly
from the
referencing,
Old
yeah.
Testament. So that even brings more validity to, Testament.
Yeah. That's a good point. That's a pretty cool thing to have come to your mind. All right. I believe we have time to get into the seventh seal. So we've had our brief interlude, which was a very peaceful time. Now we get the seventh seal. Who wants to read Revelation 8, 1-5? Janai? Janai? Not John,
Okay.
Janai.
Well, I looked up Isaiah 49:10. They shall neither hunger nor thirst. No, neither heat nor sun shall strike them. For he who has mercy on them will lead them, even by the springs of the water he will guide them. That's Isaiah 49:10.
That's right.
Sorry.
Janai, Revelation 8, 1-5, please. Yeah, this is it.
When the there was silence at the half hour, then I saw seven angels who stand before God, and the seven trumpets who didn't see them. And then the second angel and stood at the offset of the building. And he was given much. I said,
Incense.
this is the offer was the prayer of all the saints for the Lord with the throne. And the smoke of the incense of the saints rose for God from the hand of the angel. And then the angel took it and filled it with fire from the altar and spread it with the earth. And there were from
Peels.
hills from sunset with flashes of lightning.
All right, so. So we've had our brief interlude that was all peaceful. Now the seventh seal is open. And that means that the scroll is open. It's the scroll with 7 seals, so it wasn't able to open. The Lamb has opened it. It is open. Heaven can read it, and they are in stunned silence, essentially. That's what the most prominent theory for what the half hour of silence is supposed to mean. That they are reading what is in the scroll, like what God is about to do, and they're like, ugh, whoa, sitting there with like, oh, okay, that's about to happen. You know that something terrible is about to happen, and you're just seized with this shock. And they just are shocked for half an hour. The severity of God's actions which would follow. Then John sees not just 7 angels, but the 7 angels who stand before God. If you go back to the beginning of the book, there are 7 angels or 7 spirits who are before God, and the angel who's talking to John mentions, by the way, those are the 7 angels of the churches in Asia that we're talking to. So the 7 angels, and there's only one group of 7 angels that's already referenced. The 7 angels who stand before God, 7 angels of the churches of Asia, and 7 trumpets are given to them. So this is like a prelude to the next set. If you know the book of Revelation, there's the 3 sets of 7. There's the seals, there's the trumpets, and then there's the bowls of wrath. And then he shifts. This other angel came and he stood at the altar with a gold censer. If you don't know what a censer is, it is essentially a ball with lots of holes in it hanging from a chain, and you would fill it with incense or coals, or it's like a high church kind of thing. And then the priest would be walking, and it would be swinging, and it would be letting out all of its smoke. And if you're out in the open, it doesn't really do anything. But if you're like inside, like in the temple or in a tabernacle or in a cathedral or whatever, the whole space is filling up with this very pleasant smelling smoke. And in reference to the priests of Israel, they had like a special recipe for it that was only ever meant for using in the tabernacle. It was illegal to make it for any other purpose. So it was a very special smell, and it was a very good smell from the ingredients list. Yes.
Was it Aaron's sons or grandsons that had strange fire and got
Yeah, his
put
son,
down by God?
his 2 first sons,
I can't remember their names.
Nadab and Abihu.
Bye-bye.
They took strange or profane fire, whatever that really meant, and God struck them for it. They brought strange fire, and he consumed them with fire. So this angel takes, he's got the incense, and he is given, or he takes fire from the altar, that is the altar before God's throne. It is the idea of like the real things in heaven correspond to the shadow version of them on the temple, in the temple on the earth. So the altar. And he throws it down on the earth. This is something that happened in the book of Ezekiel, that an angel came, he received some of the coals or the fire from the altar, and he's got the incense censer, and he throws them down onto the earth. But in Ezekiel, we didn't get to see what happens, because it like changed scenes. It was like, and now for something completely different. But in Revelation, we see what happens when they get thrown down onto the earth. There's the peals of thunder, the rumbling, flashing of lightning, the earthquake, which is the classic Day of the Lord imagery. It is like the worst of the worst things happening, essentially. And that is the end of the seals, the 7th seal. Hopefully next time we can cover all of the trumpets. But I don't know, maybe not, because there's a pretty long interlude in between the sixth and the seventh trumpet. So we might not get all the way through them. But are there any questions or comments or interesting things before we close out? Anything we want to catch on the recording? Anybody want to tell Willie how handsome he is today on the recording?
Diane's not here.
Oh yeah, Diane's not here. Yep.
I got a real dumb one.
What's
The
up?
half hour thing threw me off. Because they didn't have time clocks back then, did they?
Oh, I mean,
know,
you would
I
have ways of
understand
measuring.
It's a short period of time, but why would you write a half an hour when they didn't know what an hour was back then?
It's because
They had Santa Claus.
they
Right, thank
did
you.
know what an
There
hour
you go.
was.
That's my answer.
They did know what an hour was.
Probably had a Santa Claus.
You've seen the Flintstones and the sandals on the.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, sundial, okay.
But in all seriousness, the concept of the hour as like a unit of time that's divided by factors of 60 actually dates back to the 5000s BC in Babylon with Hammurabi. He kind of standardized it. It's been the standard of time for basically all of human history. That's why no matter where you are, people seem to measure time in 60 seconds to a minute, 60 minutes to an hour, and 24 hours in a day, even if they don't like really gauge their day based on a clock. They all have the concept of this is what an hour is, because it dates back to so close to the beginning of human society, back in the 5000s BC, that it's essentially universal.
What was the guy's name?
Hammurabi.
Hammurabi.
Have you ever heard of the Code of Hammurabi? It was like it's recognized as the first civilized law code. It had such things like if you're building on your house and you drop a bunch of bricks and they kill a person's son, then your son is gonna get executed. Like real gems like that, you know?
Well,
Speaking of
is
sons, gotta go grab your
is
son.
an eye for an eye in there somewhere?
Yeah, it's like eye for an eye.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you
had
get
a
caught stealing, you
when
lost
they-
a
That
hand.
ended at 7:30, so it's like.
You stole again, you lost the other hand, they're brutal people.
Is that on that,
Hey.
is that in a museum in England? Like
Yeah.
the.
Well, I don't know if it's in England.
the cuneiform
What were you gonna say?
Oh, I was gonna say, by the way, we just finished the Seven Seals. The Seven Seals really pull on a lot of imagery and themes from the prophets in the Old Testament, Ezekiel, Jeremiah, Isaiah, Daniel, etc. The next set, which is the trumpets, are going to pull specifically from Exodus. They're specifically the 10 plagues. That's going to be an interesting thing for us to touch on.
What time?
Look,
for it? 7?
Time for,
7 o'clock?
so, yeah.
Hey, thanks, Ivan. I didn't mean to interrupt.
All right.
I'm sorry if I got you off track.
Oh, no. It's good.